We no longer have the right to speak out against all sorts of things here in Europe anymore, and we don't have guns to protect ourselves from tyrannical governments. And I would say that the only thing between the American people and eternal subjugation by a future Democrat government is the Second Amendment. And the reason that I'm not doing a gender-based video today is because I want to do something on guns because of the absolute hysteria that the left-wing, anti-American, in fact I'll go further, American people hating left-wing media with their globalist agenda, who desire an open borders policy, who want to turn white people into a minority, and who try to use other groups of people to achieve that by continually dividing society and creating fractions everywhere they possibly can. They're not going to give up. They're not going to stop. And I would say to Americans that if you don't hold on to those Second Amendment rights, that's the only. The Second Amendment is the only thing between the American people and having their First Amendment rights removed, their right to free speech, which is already being removed in universities anyway. So I'll cover this one as briefly as possible, and it's not a recent article, but it's very relevant to this current hysteria that the left-wing media are creating. And the title is White Men and Their Guns. It's from Huffington Post. There's a blog by Leonard Steinhorn. And he starts, perhaps we are asking the wrong questions in our national gun control debate. The issue is not whether we should have gun control laws in this country or what they should be. The issue really is why so many white middle American men view any effort to regulate firearms as an assault on their very identity and thus fight sane and rational laws as if their lives and liberties were at stake. Well, their liberties are at stake, along with the rest of the American people. So why is he picking on white middle American men? Could this be more divide and rule? More fractioning, create fractions in society, turn white men, middle American men into the bogeyman? Middle American, what does he mean by that? The flyover states? I've always found that a very patronizing term. Does he mean middle America, as in the majority of America? Is this guy some kind of coastal liberal elitist? I really don't know. I don't know who the guy is. But he says, the answer may have less to do with guns themselves than the diminishing status of white men in America over the last few decades. Yeah, well, that's been done by the left-wing media, by left-wing politicians, and by feminists, and as it is increasingly obvious, by Hollywood. And I'll pin a link to the article in the comments section. I'll pin it to the top. He goes on to give a load of statistics, which I'm not going to bore you with. But continuing his anti-gun rant, he says that guns have become totems of manhood and symbols of identity for a cohort of white, middle American, rural and ex-urban men. So he's got 4 categories in one there. So the other people who own guns, what, they're innocent to him? So I'm not sure what this guy doesn't mention anyone other than white gun owners, white male gun owners in this entire article. So he doesn't want to talk about black on black gun crime or crime committed maybe by a Mexican with a gun. No. Let's just separate one particular group. Now, as usual, it's white men. Then he goes on to attack the gun brands and their advertising slogans. Glock guns give men confidence to live your life. Well, yeah, no doubt, confidence to live my life free and to be able to protect my family if I had one, and to protect my household. And he says that guns give white men strength, status, power and respect, something they feel they have been hemorrhaging ever since the 1960s. Yes, since feminism came along, started a hate campaign against white men, infiltrated the media and permeated pretty much every tissue of society like a cancer, including politics, and they've been hating on white men ever since. Feminists hate all men anyway. And he mentions a Pulitzer Prize winning historian who speaks about how men are losing in status and respect in society. Yeah, men are being mocked in society. And again, it's the media, as always, mocked in comedies, in adverts, dramas, soaps, with the BBC announcing now that they're going to have 50-50 female presenters and 50-50 God knows what. I mean, that's not a meritocracy at all. That's I don't want to go off on a tangent here, really, but that's a socially engineered society. Anyway, he goes on again to attack what he calls white male gun culture, and that bearing arms has become, in essence, an emblem of defiance and strength. Good. And he goes on continuing his attack on white men, and he says, adding insult is that liberal intellectuals, for liberally read leftists as far as I'm concerned, cultural Marxists, as for the intellectual bit, they can shove that up their asses. And he says liberal intellectuals are now embracing gay men, thus turning the masculinity power structure of old upside down. Well, I know that leftists use gay men and gay people as a whole, and the disabled, and these days transsexuals, and anything else they can think of to marginalise white heterosexual men. The culprits of all, as always, feminists, left-wing academics, politicians, and all of it driven by the mainstream media. The American racial tableau, he says, has changed as well, with sturdy white men no longer occupying their hitherto role as real Americans in the popular imagination, and instead representing a retrograde America that harbours unseemly prejudices unfit for an educated and diverse society. What a disgusting fucking paragraph. Absolutely disgusting. These white working class men, now he's picking on the working class, often suspect that minority gains in America are not earned through hard work, but are ill-gotten through special privilege and dispensation from an all-too-eager caste of liberal elites. Well, he's nailed it on the head there. And I think I'd add to that, of course, that not just white men, but white people in Britain, when it came to Brexit, were just sick and tired of the mainstream media branding anyone who wanted to get out of the totalitarian EU as racist, and that's what helped Trump get into office. So many American people were sick and tired of being branded racist if they objected to left-wing policies for open borders, in order that the left wing can create a permanent base of voters that would keep them perpetually in power and turn whites into a minority. And I don't think I'm going to cover much more of this. In fact, I'm not going to cover any more of this article, to hell with it. But I would say this regarding holding on to America's Second Amendment rights, which is absolutely vital. You only have to look at South Africa, where whites are indeed a minority. They're 8% of the population. And there's a political party in South Africa called EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, who are growing in strength by the day. There are already massacres of white people on a daily basis, particularly on farms, which the ANC communist government put down to as bungled burglaries. They are not. They are racial hate attacks. And the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters, are openly not just calling for, but singing for the mass murder of the Boers, i.e. the whites, in South Africa. And recently the defence minister, I believe it was, for South Africa, after whites had boycotted a chain of something or other because of something they felt aggrieved about, and he warned them that they were risking being attacked if they ever tried it again. So with all these politicians right throughout the Western world desperate to turn white people into a minority, South Africa is a place to look to for a possible genocide. I hope it doesn't happen. But please, America, and I'm preaching to the converted, I know, for God's sakes, hang on to your Second Amendment rights. After that, they'll take your First Amendment rights. God knows what they'll do after then. Thank you very much.